First of all, something really important that I need to get out of the way. Luke Perry is a yes man. I gave him about 2 hours notice. Because honestly, it's a lot of stuff we talk about. And I kind of like when it seems real. Like you have to think about what you're saying as you're saying it. I know he's had to tell this story to a few people a number of times. He was a brave dude coming onto a podcast, sharing all the stuff that he's been through and sharing the things that have a lot of meaning to him, sharing about his favorite things that he enjoys doing with friends, stuff like that. I think if you're listening to this, you already know that you're in for a treat. So thank you and enjoy. Welcome to The Lifestyle Chase, Season 2. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. I'm your host, Chris Little. Let's get started. The Lifestyle Chase is brought to you by Yeg Fitness. Yeg Fitness is Edmonton, Alberta, Canada's healthy lifestyle community, creating and supporting active living for all. Check them out online at yegfitness.ca and on social media at yegfitness. Alright, so welcome to episode 66 of The Lifestyle Chase. Here I am joined by the one and only Luke Perry. How are you doing today?
Very well, Chris, thanks.
So, I have a question for you.
I have an answer.
What did you have for supper today?
For supper today, to be completely honest, that's embarrassing. I had 2 McDoubles and Oreo McFlurry with score added.
I can get on board with that. If you have to explain your why for choosing those things, and everybody should have some kind of a why. What's your why?
Well, the situation worked out really nicely to have that. I had just met with, it was meet the teacher night at my son's school, and I didn't really plan for it, but then he just kind of came away from his mom. He said, "Can we go for ice cream?" So I'm like, well, you don't really say no to such a request. So their normal ice cream place was closed. We went to McDonald's, and I was also hungry, like for things other than ice cream. So
Totally.
McDoubles are cheap. McDoubles are good.
Yeah. High protein, so...
Low grade protein, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sweet. So, in the last 7 days, what's a moment that brought you closest to joy?
Closest to joy. Well, I would say I had a pretty serious thing happen last week, and the follow up to that was absolute thankful and gratefulness. Closest thing I could probably describe to being thankful and joyful.
So you're sitting in a place where like you're not taking anything for granted right now. And that's been like the course of most situations for you, hey?
Yeah, I tend to take a fairly positive outlook on a lot of things. I believe that your perception is your reality. So if you have a crappy perception, that's, there's no hope of having anything good, and yeah, that's the way I believe.
I can get on board with that. So, I'm going to give some context to our listeners who might not know your story, but I'm going to do it in a sneaky way. So, 10 years ago, what was life like?
10 years ago, so I'm 27, I was 17. I had been probably about 6 months of living on my own in my own apartment while I was in grade 11.
Damn.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
So, like, what led to that?
Well, I grew up in the foster care system. I had my mom was hit by a car when she was 12, and she had pretty severe brain damage, and having children and the stress of, like, adapting to situations with children was not a good thing for her. So my brother and I, we grew up in care, and basically when you're kind of growing up in care, if you're about 15, 16, there's one of 2 ways you generally are going. You're going to kind of be going in school, doing reasonably well, or you're going to be kind of on the path to maybe going to jail or doing some criminal activity. And so if you're on the path of going to school, it's cheaper for them to set you up in your own apartment and give you a very minimal living allowance and expect you to maintain an attendance at school. And so that's kind of how I found myself in that situation.
So, did everything go as planned?
Well, in the long run, I would say things are working out fairly good. There was definitely some bumps along the way, absolutely.
Okay, let's take our time machine and go back back like 15 years.
Okay. That would have been, I don't know, 13 years old, and I was just in care, going through foster homes and group homes, not really staying in one place for more than 6 months or so.
Okay. In that period of time, I'm trying to like figure out what's shaped a lot of things in your life, like what makes you you. So we have like a 5-year period, and who were the most influential people between like the 15 years ago and the 10 years ago? Like what made you make your decisions in life? What influenced you? What inspired you during that time?
Well, my grandparents played a huge role in my life because my mom was, after my brother and I were taken from her, she kind of disappeared. And her parents, so my grandparents on the maternal side, they played a pretty big role in our lives. They were huge. They were a portion of stability for me in that time, and I think children need a portion. They need a lot of stability, and if you don't have that, that can lead to a variety of issues just a variety of issues. And they were really a good pillar for me in that whole period of time.
I like that. What stood out to you about them? Like, what qualities did they have, or like happy memories?
Well, actually, it was my grandpa I give credit to for getting me into exercise. So when I was like 6 years old, he was training for triathlons. He was in his late 40s. And they live in Twin Brooks, which is an area in Edmonton that has a nice little walking trail all the way around it. And he would run in the walking trails, and I would get up at 6 or 7 in the morning and ride my bike with him. And so we'd do 5 or 6 kilometer bike rides for me and runs for him. And that was, I really enjoyed that. We would chat and we would go swimming and we would hang out and do stuff like that. And a big portion of why I stayed active over the years was because of that initial foundation with him. And my grandma's, they're both bomb cooks. So they always made homemade food, where I was often eating things like Chef Boyardee or craft dinner at home. And I use home with quotations. So those are two big things with them.
I like that. And I like talking about the exercise because, like, in your social media, you talk about, like, implementing exercise for kids and in their, like, adolescence and, like, making it a normal thing, making it fun, obstacle courses, stuff like that.
Yeah.
What inspires you, or what motivates you to be so, like, diligent in that?
Well, I think it's a few things. I mean, I'm diligent at getting human beings to exercise. But with my own son now, it seems to me that exercise has held such a positive thing in my life for so many different reasons. And I didn't really have much guidance like that growing up outside of my grandpa. So I want to make sure that I just want to normalize it for my son Logan. If he can the gym is just a normal thing where it's like, what do you mean we're not going to the gym, instead of, we have to go to the gym?
Yeah.
I want to build that from a young age, and then as he grows, he can specialize his interests and find fun in that, but I'm at least directing him towards a path that no matter what is going to lead to betterment of himself somehow.
I like that. So how old is your son?
He's 7.
Okay. So we go back 7 years, that puts you at like 20?
Yeah, I was 19 in my first year at NAIT PFT school.
Damn, man, like there's gotta be a story to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I gotta ask.
I had a one night stand one time, and I seen the girl about 4 months later, and we were hanging out again, and I was thinking to myself, like, obviously I wouldn't say such a thing, but it definitely a thought occurred in my head. I'm like, she seems like she's put on a little bit of weight. Like, I wonder what's going on. And so that was 4 or 5 months after the initial point of contact, and then about a week after that, she texted me on a Sunday, and she's like, hey, we need to talk. And of course, you're like, well, we're not dating, so what can that possibly mean? I gave her a call, and she's like, yeah, so I've been feeling kind of sick the last little while. I've gained some weight. I don't really know why. And I just finished her sentence for her. I was like, and you're pregnant. She's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, it's mine. She's like, yeah. And this girl wasn't promiscuous in a sense, and I didn't really have any reason to suspect that it wouldn't have been my child, so I didn't even really bother with that too much. He was born on the reading week of my first year at NAIT.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What was your like initial thought?
Well, I always actually joked at the time when I was younger, before the name Luke Perry really stuck. I joked. I said if I ever had gotten a girl pregnant when I was a young teenager, I said I was going to move to BC and call myself Luke Perry. But when it actually happened, and the day or two later, as it set in, I thought about my parents, and my old man's never really been around in the parent sense, and I couldn't be the reason that another kid grows up without a father, and so I made a decision to make sure I was going to be the father for this child.
I like that. It's admirable, and like the interesting thing is it's kind of like a parallel universe situation we got here. I'm 27. My life went very differently, and so it's easy for me to kind of be like, holy shit, like my life didn't have to be the way my life went. It could be like the way his life went, and vice versa. It teaches empathy, just to be able to like sit down with somebody who's doing the exact same job, like the same like day-to-day stuff now, similar day-to-day stuff now. Like obviously I don't have like the same family that you have, but we have the same, like we're working with our clients and we're finding our meal when we're tight for time. We're having our McDoubles from time to time. You gotta live a little bit.
You gotta eat.
We both like ice cream.
Yes.
But it's just like, how often do people stop and think, okay, I gotta put myself in this other person's shoes? Like, we're often like, me, woe is me, right?
Yeah, empathy can be a hard thing. It's definitely something I've both struggled with and developed over the years. And a lot of people, you can kind of go day to day and be so focused on your own little world that you don't really give yourself the time to give a shit about anybody else.
And the crazy thing is we haven't dropped nearly as many bombs as we could with this episode so far. So I want to give the listeners a bit more context. I'm trying to map it out. We went back 10 years.
Yeah.
So living on your own, did you have anything coming up with your health at that point, or were you healthy?
So this can actually be added to the 15-year mark. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So when I was 13 years old, going through the group homes and stuff, I was also taking a pill called Dexedrine, which is a pill for ADHD, to help me focus. And with that came monthly blood work. And now I pieced all this together after the fact, but at the time, I was having some monthly blood work done, and then all of a sudden I found myself going to a number of different doctor's appointments kind of within the same 3 or 4 month period. And I don't know why I didn't think anything of it, but I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, I haven't really been in one place for a while. They're just making sure my body works and everything. I didn't really think anything of it. And then I was sat down at the University of Alberta Hospital when I was 13 years old, and I was told that I had stage 3 chronic renal failure with a kidney function at about 43% at that time.
So how old were you then?
That was 13.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was told that at that time, and really there was no immediate effects on my life. Like, I was still completely normal. I didn't have to adjust my diet. I didn't have to take any extra medication. But they told me that it was going to progress over the years, and eventually there was no way to tell when. At some point I would need a transplant. So that was pretty heavy news for a 13-year-old.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember sitting there with tears in my eyes wondering, and that was a big kind of turning point, I guess, because that constantly also made me focus on, or at least have in the back of my mind, of my health. With like any life decisions, in the later years, maybe experimenting with drugs after school and stuff like that. Like, my health is always a priority, so it was almost a blessing in disguise, in a small sense.
Like, as life unfolded, you just get this news, you're 13 years old, you're working through the foster care system, all that stuff. Like, what do you do when you hear bad news? Because I know when I hear bad news, like, I gotta tell somebody, I need somebody to vent to. What was your situation like?
Well, at the time, I don't think I was really at the point of sharing yet. I was still very closed, very protected, because the simple defense mechanism of, well, if I'm not going to be in this place for very long, what's the point of creating a relationship? So at the time, I don't really know what... I was probably just acting out, misbehaving, getting myself into trouble because I was unable to express how I was actually feeling or articulate my emotions at the time.
So what kind of trouble?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of trouble?
Well, I was doing things like... I was getting into smoking weed when I was younger. I was doing things with... kind of, going around back alleys and trying to pop open door handles of cars and stuff. Nothing like very violent or gang-like, but just like mischievous kind of kid sort of crimes, I guess.
And like, honestly, like, painting the picture, I don't think there's a single person that couldn't be like, oh yeah, like, that's a lot of trauma to go through. I don't know how I would handle that. So I can't, like, you can't be like, man, what a bad human. Like, it's just like, you're coping. Like,
Yeah.
What would anybody else do in that situation? I can't imagine. I don't know what I would do, but I'm sure I wouldn't be like a complete angel, just
Right.
going through all this shock and stuff. Honestly, I think it probably equips you to relate to more people.
I believe that.
That need help.
I believe that.
So what was the pivotal moment where you needed to have something done for your kidneys?
Well, we're going to fast forward or rewind to 2017. My kidney function had come down to about just below 20%. And I was still feeling pretty reasonable. I'd kept myself obviously in a much better physical shape than a lot of people with that going on. And it started to be at the point where I would start cramping. That was the one thing I noticed that really affected me. I would get these weird muscle cramps. Like for one, I was brushing my teeth one time, and so the muscle here, the brachioradialis, just locked up, and I dropped my arm, but my hand just kept there, my toothbrush up by my mouth as if I was like flexing my arm. And for about 30 seconds, it just kind of I was totally relaxed, but the muscle wasn't. And then eventually my arm just fell to the side. And things like working out, if I'm doing chest, my chest would start cramping within 15 minutes of my workout. And then I would need like a 9-hour sleep, and I would also need an hour or two nap in the middle of the day. And so that was when it really started to I was starting to actually feel the effects of it for the first time, so I thought.
So what were your thoughts then? Like, what was your reaction?
Well, it was mixed. I was dating someone at the time who was incredibly supportive, who really helped me through that. But it was definitely a mixed feelings, because I've been through a lot of shit in my life, and I tend to have a positive outlook on things. I'm always thinking it could be worse or this or that. And it was when I started dialysis. It was November of 2018. No, 2017. 2017 I started dialysis, and that was like a really tough thing to do. You know, I was 25 years old, 26 years old. I had a six-pack. I was in great shape, but I was sitting next to these people in a hospital bed that were practically dead, and I was plugging in 15-gauge needles into my arm. And for anybody who's familiar, that's like almost the size of a pen. And you know, that took pretty hard, because I had the desire to keep my fitness up. I had the desire to keep helping people and working, but my body and my brain, like I was so foggy, I couldn't think straight, couldn't focus, tired all the time. Like I didn't have the ability to match my desire.
Yeah.
And that was really tough.
Yeah. So like, what happens when because you were in the fitness industry at that point, right?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
So you work in the fitness industry, which is a never-ending hassle. It's not really the most straightforward way to make an income for most people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this like health problem come up. Like what do you do? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so I was working for a commercial facility here in town at the time, and it's a big company, employs a lot of people, and essentially when I got sick, I felt like it was just, I just became a number that was no longer. I went from a trainer that was bringing in 6 figures a year of revenue for this company, to when I wasn't really working, and the treatment changed as well. Like it matched kind of. I was getting treated really well and I was doing well, and then they really didn't care. They withheld a paycheck for like 6 months, and I was on medical leave from my doctor, so that was tough. I ended up getting onto some government assistance for the situation, because I was on what's called life-sustaining therapy, because I needed to devote 15 hours a week to plug myself into this machine in order just to exist. So that was able to keep me alive. I have an Aunt Helen who lives out in Victoria, bless her soul, who has a fair bit of money, and she's helped me out a little bit here and there over the last few years, and that's been incredibly helpful as well when things have gotten really tough.
Yeah.
Because I was able to. I also knew I didn't want to overwork myself, because I knew that I wasn't running at capacity, but I didn't know where that line was, and I didn't want to have people I was responsible for and make mistakes and find out that way.
Mm-hmm.
So
were you able to work at all, or did you have to stay away from work altogether?
So it was tough, because a lot of the trainers that I know that have done their thing from whatever commercial facility to Evolve have managed to take a fair bit of their clients with them, not stealing them from the gym for a sense, but they were still working, they were busy, they were able to make a smooth transition. I didn't really work much at all for about 6 months, and then I incorporated my business and jumped into Evolve. And so that was, I was just almost starting from ground zero again, and that's been tough even to now. I'm still feeling the effects of that. But, that is minor in comparison to other obstacles. So that's something I'm able to keep a positive mindset about.
Totally. When you've been making your income as a trainer, like, have you ever had to do like a side hustle? Like, I'll give you an example. I worked at Central for a year. That was a solid side hustle. Have you ever had anything like that, or has it always just been training, training, training?
Well, recently I've had a couple of side hustles. The less important one that was actually paying me more money was delivering pizzas.
Nice.
Which was a nice little job. But more importantly, I've actually got myself involved with a study at the University of Alberta Hospital. So I was volunteering at first, and the study was for people who have between 15 and 45% kidney function. And they're going to be put through a very simple 8-week exercise program, and the outcome is measuring ambulatory systolic blood pressure and resting heart rate, or something along those lines. It sounds a little bit more intelligent than what I just said. And anyway, I was volunteering for the first few months, and then I think the doctor, the nephrologist that I was working for, messaged me one day, and I think she found some grant money because she was like, well, I've heard you've been doing really well, this and that. We'd like to start paying you. And I'm like, yeah, money sounds good. Well, sure. I'm already giving my time to you for free, so now I'm on with the Department of Medicine at the University of Alberta Hospital as an exercise trainer. So that's a really neat opportunity to work with a very niche population that I have. I'm probably the best person in the city suited to work with.
Yep, I will not dispute that. I don't know anybody else that could relate to that level. So what does that entail? Like, take us through the job description.
So I'm not, I'm simply just the exercise trainer. So they have an exercise protocol that they follow, and I just kind of take them through it. So it's a training session. The training is very, very light. Like, we're talking 30 to 60 second isometric holds. So things like maybe a seated single leg knee extension, and you hold that for a minute. So I do a warm up with them. I greet them. I ask them if they've had any medication changes or doctor's visits, and talk to them a little bit about this or that. They strap on a heart rate monitor. We do a little bit of mobility warm ups, and then we do some exercises, and then they do progressing rates of cardio. So 5 minutes ideally every week, increasing, and measure heart rates, RPE, stuff like that, and then chat with them, stretch, send them home.
I like it. What is, out of the clients that you're working with in that space, what is something that kind of has stuck with you in that experience? Because I feel like they're coming from different backgrounds, you got other things they're working with, and it might have changed how you see things.
Well, it's kind of just reinforced a belief of mine that I'm still trying to figure out a way to do this. The older generation, I really do believe, is uninformed in what movement and what biomechanics and can do for people, because there's these people that just, their knee is, they have a bum knee, so they say, right, or their legs bow, or this or that, and they just, that's it. That's how they are, that's what they have to deal with, and they have to take these pills, and that's just kind of the way that life is. And it bothers me because I know that that's not the case. Maybe some of these guys, sure, they have maybe a couple years left of life. Like, in all honesty, what quality of life improvements can we give them? But for the most part, I think most people can be helped, just through a little bit of simple movement supervised by someone that knows what they're doing.
Yep.
And that's just as reinforcing that belief for me. And I've been trying to talk to a few of them and say, hey, if you're finishing this up, because all these guys, from holding their legs out for 60 seconds once a week, are like, oh my goodness, you should see how much better I'm feeling. I can reach for the cupboard, I can do this, I can do that. And I was like, if you want to keep building on that, just like give me a call, and I'd be very happy to kind of keep going with you.
Yeah. And it's just like movement in general, because like people need that feeling of community or that feeling of connection, and sometimes you could be that main connection or that main like support system.
Yeah.
And like, imagine if just the simplest movements make the biggest impact in their day. Absolutely. And then imagine if that led into even bigger things and even bigger things. Like, we get so many clients that come into the gym saying, well, I can't do this because of the age. And it's like, well, thank goodness that the 90-year-old is there doing 20 reps of pull-ups, because now we can point over there. Like, have you ever had situations like that where you had a client that was like, I can't do this, and then somebody else was literally doing it, older or something like that?
Well, actually, I have a client that is that older woman.
Excellent.
And she constantly surprises herself even, and I love it. It makes me giggle and smile on the inside. So,
what's the coolest thing that she has done?
So she has done recently. She's done band pull-ups, unassisted by me. And this is a 62-year-old woman who came to me about a year ago with pretty bad nerve impingement at her C7, and she has some tinglies all down her hand, and very, very atrophied tricep on the one side, and painful to walk, painful to move, and now she did these pull-ups, and it's not related to the tricep, but you better believe there was no way she was doing that a year ago, and she gave me a big sweaty hug and was so happy about it, and it's really nice to see that.
That's the joys of the job.
That's it.
So I imagine, okay, we're going to exclude the obstacle that happened last week.
Okay.
I want to know 2 more obstacles.
Okay.
You must have 2 more obstacles.
2 more obstacles. Well, so besides growing up, I got evicted from my first couple of apartments because I was a 16 or 17-year-old with the independence of somebody older. So just various different things like, loud music or broke a window or, who knows what. Left me finding, with a 14-day eviction notice, so I needed to find a new place to live within 2 weeks. And at 17 years old, you also don't have the damage deposit just kind of hanging out in the bank account ready to go. So I had to scramble a few times, and my uncle Dale, who's a physiotherapist, is thinking about moving up to Edmonton, and he was asking me if I could help him find a place. And I told him, Dale, you're talking to the master of finding places on Kijiji on short notice. That's definitely something I could help you out with.
That's funny.
Number 2, I don't know. So we have to leave the kidney failure thing out entirely, that whole thing, or the transplant itself. We didn't even talk about that.
Oh, we didn't get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
I wanted to think of something else.
Something else outside of that. Well, I think just being able to come to terms with kind of my parents, what's respectively, each one is a very separate issue, but just kind of coming to terms with that's what it is and that's how they are, and moving on from it and stopping it letting affect kind of my decisions day to day was pretty huge.
How do you do that? I'm not trying to be ignorant, but if I put myself in your shoes, and if I'm trying to because that would affect everything that I do,
Mm-hmm.
every choice that I make, every thought that I have,
Mm-hmm.
and I would struggle. And I imagine that you would probably have times when it's shit, man, why me? So what's your way to see positive? Because you're a pretty positive dude, all things considered.
Yeah. Turn that alarm off. So, can you just run through that one more time?
Okay, so having to navigate the different family dynamics and all that stuff, how do you stay positive when it just kind of feels like shit didn't go your way,
Well, one of the things I'm forever thankful for is, and I don't mean to sound arrogant when I say this, is I'm really smart. I've always been able to really think about things. The problem with me has been impulsivity, so it may appear that I'm dumb, but I have a really good brain, and I've always been able to really think about things and internalize them. And I've spent a fair bit of my youth seeing a therapist, and just spending time with them. I've learned, a lot about the subconscious mind, about my own subconscious mind, and about kind of how others may. It leads me to make good educated guesses sometimes about why people are doing certain things, and ultimately I realized that it doesn't matter where, nobody gives a shit about you. Nobody cares that my parents what happened to them. If I want to make it in this world and I want to be successful and I want to be able to expand my reach and help more people, which is what I ultimately want to do, nobody's going to care about that stuff. And if I let that stuff affect my decision making, then it's not going to help me. And every decision that I need to make, instead of thinking about that, needs to be somehow to try to avert stress in the future, opposed to just kind of making decisions based on emotion.
Nailed it. That was a good answer. Well, it's just, I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of things going on in their life, and they're like, what will Billy and Timmy and Susie think? But Billy and Timmy and Susie aren't thinking about our stuff. And so the statement of nobody cares, we have to deliver that in such a way that people receive it properly.
Okay, yeah.
So, it's just, because somebody will say that and somebody will be like, nobody cares about me. Like,
Yeah.
people care. Like, I care about you. You care about me.
Yes.
But then when I'm like, what will I have for lunch? I would really like a McDouble, but what will Luke think?
Right.
You're not really, like, you're not invested in those parts of me, and, like,
No.
maybe the food analogy was a little bit loose.
It works.
It works.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I've used all kinds of analogies
I
on
love
the course of the
analogies.
podcast, but it's just... But I think that's important, and I think you're the best case Ontario to... do you ever watch Trailer Park Boys?
Of
there
course.
we go. Good,
Yeah.
good. Thank goodness. You're the best case scenario to allude to the fact that sometimes we have to put all of our other things aside and focus on what we can do to reduce the obstacles or reduce the inconvenience or just make things a little bit better.
And I'm not trying to say that I'm the master at that, but that's something that I try to keep in my mind for sure.
Well, I think you're on a good track. You got the right idea. We're able to talk about seeing a therapist because that's a very real thing, and it's something that, like, nobody should ever feel ashamed if they have to seek out anything that helps with their mental health.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I think it's important to include that into a podcast because then people hear two personal trainers talking about it
Yes.
in a very mature and, like, eloquent way.
Yeah. I think if
Because, yeah.
someone has, if you're seeing someone, if you're trying to take care of your mental health and you have somebody in your life that's passing negative judgment on you for that, that's one of those situations that I think someone's either helping you or hurting you, and if they're hurting you, then you don't need them around.
Totally. Have you ever had somebody like that around you?
Not to do with the mental health thing, no.
Okay.
But definitely I've had to remove a fair share of people out of my life because they haven't been helping me.
Oh, yeah, like, we don't even need to dive down all the rabbit holes. Like, it can kind of go without saying, like, a life like yours is going to have a lot of different people to filter through.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you've made it this far, you've done a pretty good job filtering. Who in your training career has really, like, helped you level up versus being held back?
Well, most recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, absolutely my cousin Dale. Dale Dice is his name. He owns Perfect Rehabilitation and the Complete Core down in Medicine Hat. He's been a physiotherapist since 2 years before I was born. So just the sheer experience that he has, and he's the type of guy that can just kind of look at you and he'll go, okay, Chris, so if you cock your head to the left and you touch your knee with your right hand, you get a pain in your left shoulder. And then you'll do that, and sure enough, that pain will happen, and then he'll do some work with you, and then that won't hurt anymore. And he's so smart that I hope to be half as good as he is one day. Recently, that was definitely my most influential person, kind of as a mentor.
Yeah.
Back when I first started working at World Health, it was at a commercial facility in Edmonton. My very first mentor was probably Andrew Coates. He was taking on a lot of the younger trainers at the time and showing them kind of the ropes, and he taught me a few key things that I still use today, like the cost-benefit analysis and the risk-reward analysis. That's two of the things that have stuck with me over the years, and I use those daily.
I like it. As far as continuing education goes, we all pick our poison. Like, we all kind of have the stuff that we want to learn more about, or the stuff that we really enjoyed, and it can be like a very small book, it can be like a big thing that you went to, or an expensive course, or a cheap course, or a one-day conversation. What's something that stood out to you that was like, wow, I see things so differently now?
When I was at NATE, one of the instructors by the name of Lorraine Glass, she does the corrective exercise course, and for me, I was never, even at the younger age, I was never really an athlete. I didn't want to bodybuild per se. I didn't really powerlifting, CrossFit, none of these Olympic barbell sports kind of had draw to me, and I really took to like to corrective exercise. And right off the bat, before I was even certified, I was just working out with this guy at World Health, and I had helped him with his shoulders, and he was a welder, and he told me that one day he was like, I haven't had to take my Tylenol 3s in 2 weeks, and I haven't had pain at work, and I just wanted to thank you. And I was overwhelmed with such a feeling of joy that I was like, wow, this is amazing, like this is what I can do. And ever since then, I've definitely been down that kind of corrective exercise rehabilitation path for sure.
I like it. So you'd say that's like the thing that you enjoy most about the training aspect is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love just helping people that have pain every day, like physical pain. I just like helping them feel better.
Yeah, and like it would kind of tie to the amount of different physical, emotional, different pain that you've gone through. Like,
Yeah, totally. I think anybody that has a lot of pain or experienced a lot of pain in their lifetime wants to find some way to help others not
Yeah.
hurt.
yeah,
And I think this is a realization I've probably had over the last year, and this is kind of my way of trying to help people not hurt.
I like it. So now to drop the bomb on the kidney failure.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me more.
Yeah, so to take it back, I was on dialysis there, and I got a call. So I started dialysis. I was on dialysis for under a year, which is nearly unheard of. I do, anybody listening, I do understand how short of a time frame that was to be on dialysis, and especially because I got a deceased donor transplant, not a living donor transplant. So I was just hanging out one day. I was going to go grab a workout at Evolve downtown, and I got a call from a doctor who was really chill and calm, and just like, yeah, I think we have one here for you. We're going to have to just do a couple more tests, and so we're going to let you know. He was talking to me, and they told me at the very beginning, like, one day you're going to get a call. It might be at 3 in the morning, it might be at 6 at night, and you're just going to have to drop everything and go to the hospital. But the doctor was so nonchalant on the phone, I didn't really understand, and then I was like, wait a minute, are you saying that I have to go to the hospital for a transplant right now? And he said, yeah, this is that call. And so it was August 23rd or something like that in 2018. And so I got to the hospital, and on the 25th of August, I went in the early morning and I had a transplant. And that was, so they with a kidney transplant, a lot of people don't know much about it. They tend to leave the native kidneys where they are. So they're kind of situated behind your ribs. And it's a little bit more of a medically complicated process to go and get those. So unless they really need to, they don't. So my new kidney is on the front side, just underneath my abs, and it's attached to my right psoas, so on top of my hip flexor. And that happened in August, and the one thing about the kidney failure that probably everybody after transplant is going to say is, I didn't know how sick I was until I had a better state of existence to compare it to, because the decrease in kidney function was so long. Like, it took 15 years to go from 40 to 10. So it wasn't like one day I just woke up and I was like, wow, do I fail? Do I feel like crap? It wasn't like that at all. It was just like such a slow decline, and kind of just like one, it was varying levels of suck. Sometimes it sucked a lot, sometimes it sucked a little bit. It always just kind of sucked. But then about a month after the transplant, once the kind of all the anti-immunosuppressive drugs of kind of my body started to get used to that stuff, it was like I had the worst hangover that you can imagine having. And then you've had that hangover for 10 years. Okay, and so then, 2 or 3 years into that hangover, you don't remember you don't remember that you're hungover, you're just kind of living life. And then a number of years later, you wake up one day and that hangover's gone. And it was just amazing, the clarity of thought, the ability to move, and the energy I had, and to even just like articulate words. Like, I didn't know. They talk about a brain fog when you have kidney failure, because basically your blood is full of urea, so it's full of pee. So your brain doesn't function so good if there's no oxygen and just a bunch of pee floating through your blood. But I didn't really realize that until I could actually stop and think, and I'm like, wow, I can say with these words, these things come to mind so much easier. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's cool. And for some people, like, I tend to have a very relatable jargon that I go through. Like, I can use big words, but I also use some small words. And I'm just trying to, again, put myself in your shoes, and I'm like, okay, best case Ontario, using a bunch of trailer park analogies, and it's just like, for someone like yourself, because you are very well spoken, there would be certain words that wouldn't even pop into your head, that all of a sudden the next day, as the brain is functioning more, because it's words that you're more commonly using, then you go, oh my goodness, this makes life so much easier.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I'm glad that you understood that. I wasn't sure if I was doing a good job explaining that.
You painted the picture. I probably made myself sound a little bit dumb. Like, I'm also very academic. I just talk different, that's all.
No, that's fair.
But, no, like, I can totally appreciate what you got out of that. Like, for it being such a big part of your identity, and then all of a sudden you get that, and you're actually able to, like, own it. Because I imagine you've spent a lot of time, like, reading through books to accumulate that knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's got to be frustrating to be like, well, I read it, like, why isn't it sticking? Like, is that sort of the process that happened?
Yeah, and there's also, so I also have ADHD, and so like losing your phone, wallet, and keys, you don't really lose anything. You just put them somewhere and you can't find them. There's a thing called kidney brain. So again, because there's a bunch of pee floating around in your blood, your short-term memory goes to garbage. So I have ADHD plus that. So it was awful. Like I would need to come back into the house because I forgot my phone, and then I would need to come back into the house again because I forgot my wallet. And it wasn't even just like once a day, or it was like all the time. And like my girlfriend would say something to me, and then she'd bring it up an hour later, and like it was every single day. Like those typical things that girls kind of get annoyed about guys. They don't listen, they don't forget. But it was like full time all the time, and like she was upset. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like I'm not trying to be a dickhead here. Like I can't. It's not staying. You know. Yeah.
How do you navigate that? Because like I'm sure it's like some things would have gotten better, and then some things would have just kind of been the way they've always been.
A lot of alarms on phones.
Okay.
A lot of alarms on phones. So like I'd probably have like different alarms to take medication, to do the dishes, to do this or that, and like on top of like my clients, like I had almost my entire days mapped out whether I was working or not, just so I would be able to know, okay, yeah, this is what I got next, like. And then it was a little bit more helpful, but I mean there was a certain degree of like there was a diminishing rate of returns on things I could do to help that.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of had to live that way for a bit there.
If you had anybody like listening to this podcast, I guarantee you there's going to be at least a few people living as trainers with ADHD that'll listen to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And what advice would you have for them?
One of the things I realized most recently is you have to accept it. So I've spent the last little while feeling like every day it's a Luke versus Luke situation, and I take L's every day. There's too many L's in there to think of that. But anyway, it's like a lose every day because I'm gonna forget something. Something's gonna go wrong. I'm gonna need to spend money on lunch because I forgot my meal prep at home, like something like that. And I would get upset at myself for it. I'd be like, I'm such an idiot. Why can't I just remember? It's like it's just my wallet or something like that. But coming to a point of acceptance. Now I've been trying the last like week or two here. I just have a chuckle. I'm like, yeah, forgot the keys again. Like, and I just like, that's me. I'll even say that out loud. That's me. And so try to give myself another 10, 15 minutes on top of the extra 10 or 15 minutes I already give myself, you know? Like if I say I'm going to be there in half an hour, I now say I'm going to be 45 minutes. Because I'm probably going to just get distracted or forget something.
Yeah.
And I just have to, you can take medication, you can put things in place, but, that's me. My brain runs around on 1,000,000 miles a minute, and I just have to work with that and learn to work with that.
Yeah.
That's probably what I would say. Number one is just accept it. And as soon as you can accept it, you can begin to kind of position your plan around that.
Yeah, like what can you do? That's the way it is. Own it.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So hopefully everybody out there is owning it too. So I want to talk about last week because that's kind of what made me pull the trigger on having you on here.
Yeah.
It kind of, I knew your story. I knew you lived a tough life, and I was like, no, he needs one more obstacle. So I'm sorry, we'll knock on wood, no more obstacles for you.
Yeah.
Let's live a nice, serene, calm life from this point forward.
Yeah.
But what happened? Like, what led up to it? What was it like?
So a longtime friend of mine had gotten himself kind of stranded and stuck in Winnipeg and needed a ride home. And so I moved a couple of my clients around, and I decided to go and get him because he was going to pay me $500. And I was driving a 2013 Fiat 500 Abarth. So it's just a little Fiat 500, but it's the one with the turbo and it's a little bit faster, but it's just a tiny little car. I was like, yeah, that thing's basically electric. I'll probably spend $150 on gas and I'll pocket the rest. Like, sure, let's do it. So I went out there on last Sunday night, and I slept in the car for most of the night in Saskatchewan, and then I drove to Winnipeg, picked up my friend. We started heading out again to Edmonton at night, and I slept for another 2 different times of about 2 to 3 hours each time. It was just car sleep though, and in like a bucket seat, so it wasn't super restful sleep. We're about 3 hours north of Winnipeg, and it's about 6:30 in the morning, and I'm driving along, and I fell asleep. I woke up as to an impact, and the sunroof was shattering as it was doing a board slide across the road. And I looked over at my friend, terrified, We did a number of flips, rolls, whatever, and then it was a steep ditch, so we didn't just roll into the ditch, we rolled off the road and landed in the ditch. About halfway through that, I had kind of realized what was going on, and I tucked my chin, and I pushed my head back into the seat so I could kind of protect my spine. It was almost instinctive. And then as we kind of rolled to a stop, I wiggled my fingers, I wiggled my toes, I felt my scar on my kidney, and I figured I was all right. I looked over at my passenger, and I knew it was an inappropriate question to ask if he was okay. So I asked if he was alive, because he was very clear that he was not okay. And he kind of, gave me a gesture that, yeah, he was in fact alive. And so by the grace of God, I just unbuckled my seatbelt and I got out of the car as if nothing had happened. And I looked up, and what had happened is we had collided with the back of a grader. The left back tire of a grader at probably 100 kilometers an hour, maybe just below that. And so I ran up to the road to flag people down to get an ambulance called. Somebody else said that the car was smoking. Did you have another passenger in there? And I said, yeah, we got to get him out. So I ran over, and my friend's legs were stuck inside the car. It had kind of folded around him, and I was terrified. I thought his legs were shattered. So I asked him if I moved his legs a little bit, asked him if it hurt. He said no, pulled him out, laid him down in a blanket, and ambulance came and got us. And we went to the hospital.
He's doing okay?
He's pretty infirmed. At this present moment, there's a lot of guilt on my behalf. He's got a long road of recovery ahead of him, but he's not paralyzed, and he is still with us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have to preface, I don't mean to, make you talk about all these shitty things that happen, but I think one of the most important things about having a podcast is almost giving people, hope. You get a guest like yourself that despite all these things, you're navigating your way through. There's no answer key to life.
No.
It just throws things at people. And I've had guests that have battled rare diseases and overcome cancer and MS, all these different obstacles that come up. We lose people in our lives. There's so many things. And sometimes you just have to learn that life isn't all that it's cracked up to be. It should be enjoyed, and the moments should be savored, and memories should be made, and loved ones should be loved. But sometimes shit happens and it just goes crazy. So then what do you do? So that brings us to the next thing. What did you do? You had your weekend. I know that you spent a lot of time just kind of soaking it in.
Yeah. So I got home on Wednesday night, and I just slept Thursday, and I wanted to go to work Friday because I need to work and I have clients that need my attention and whatnot. And but I was honestly there's definitely a little bit of trauma that happened there, and I've been getting a couple of flashbacks of what happened, and the guilt is real, whether or not it was intentional, and whether or not, you are responsible for the lives that are in your vehicle. And that's been weighing pretty heavy on me.
Yeah.
I've kind of just been taking it easy. I've been focusing a little bit more on my work. Today I kind of just dove into some stuff on my computer that I was a little bit behind on to have something to focus on.
Yeah.
And I'm dealing with it as it comes. I'm going to see my therapist tomorrow. And my friend is we're talking, we're joking, we've made a couple of dark jokes about it and laughed about it a bit, so there's no blame there. He's made it clear to me that I'm gonna be blaming myself more than he blames me, which is good. I think I'd rather have it that way.
Yeah.
But as you say, life goes on.
Well, in communication too, I'm a big advocate for communication in anything. And just imagine if all that happened and you felt so guilty that you couldn't talk to him again, and then that's just how life unfolded. But yet you found a way to talk to him. That's a great thing, because despite all of life's obstacles, if you find your ride or die people, I imagine this guy's your homie.
Yeah. So from way back.
So that's pretty cool to be able to, you can be we went through that together, we made it.
Yeah, well, him and I have been through some shit for sure. And yeah, that's it. It's a hard, I'm calling him every day, and it's not a hard thing to call him because I don't want to talk to him. It's a hard thing to call him because of how guilty I feel every time I hit that call button. and then just to check up on him, make sure that he's doing all right. If there's anything I can do, with my limited reach. He's in Winnipeg, I'm in Edmonton, but it's I'm not gonna just kind of shy away from what happened.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So what's changed since then? Like, you've probably kind of reassessed a few things.
Yes, sir. Number one, I got closer to God. I was brought up a Roman Catholic, and I've definitely strayed away from that over the years, especially kind of drifting into the paths that I drifted into. I won't go too deep into it, but I mean, I really don't believe that could have happened without some divine intervention. There was just so many of those details could have been minutely changed to convert Luke Perry to liquid form all over that highway, and that would have been it. There would have been no podcast today. So that was one thing. Another thing is life is so precious. My grandma always said that to my son when he was younger, and I never really understood. But because every moment in time is never going to be repeated. Like this moment that we're having right here is never going to be repeated. And that car accident, the fact that we lived and that situation is never going to be repeated. And if something were to just cause it to end, which it very well can, we need to kind of enjoy. Don't forget to live along the way.
Yeah. So every week, what are 3 things, and I call these like non-negotiables, but what are 3 things that have to happen in your life to make it feel like, yes, we are doing our very, very best?
I need to have some good sessions with my clients and make sure that I feel like we're all making progress. I need to spend time with both my son and my cat. Those are both very important things. And just to maintain the relationships of those around me. I always felt it was really important that to maintain relationships with family and with a select few friends. And there's a lot of studies out there that say that happiness is equated to the relationships that you have, not the money, not the success. Old people that are still happy and live long have a lot of friends, like
Yep.
true good friends.
Yep.
And I like to live by that too.
I agree.
Don't forget to live along the way.
So when it comes to like connecting with friends, what's your favorite way to connect with friends?
Well, fitness has been a big part of that. So a number of my friends, one in particular, we've always had different training regimes together, and working out has always been a neat thing. Like he works in investment banking now, but he could very well, I'm sure he could go and challenge his CanFit test and pass it, just because of how much info I've shared with him over the years. Hanging out, just I do like smoking marijuana in the evening times, and that's a nice come down, wind down from the day, hanging out with your friends. And then something that might have been changing for me here is I'm a car guy. I love cars. I've had a lot of cool cars in my few years, and I enjoy driving them, enjoy looking at them, enjoy talking about them. I enjoy breaking them, but I don't know how to fix them. And so that's been something too. A lot of my friends have nice cars, and we like to get together and do car guy stuff.
And I think the overarching theme is like you're going out of your way to actually see them in person, right?
Yes. Yeah. That whole the technology thing. It's like it keeps you further away from people that are important to you.
Yeah.
And I've even for applying for jobs or anything really, like if you have an option to call in or go in, if I have the time, 10 times out of 10 I will go in, because I think it's more memorable to have an interaction with a person than send in an application or just speak to somebody on the phone, like at the post office even, or anything. I prefer to have that interaction.
Well, even with just like health in general, like I think people need to feel connected. They need to have someone that is like willing to listen to like what's going on, hear them out, make that time, like talk through the alarms, all these different things that kind of like stir up the routine.
Mm-hmm.
And just be there and not be so like attached to, like, I know how much convenience our devices bring us. I know how much time I personally spend on social media.
Awful.
But then I also know that I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't have like one-on-one time with so many different people. Like, the crazy thing is kind of like a social experiment. I've been doing this podcast, and I think I counted up like 65 different guests in the last year.
Okay.
And then on top of that, all the different coffee meetings. Because every so often I'd be like, okay, who wants to meet up? And like people would take me up on it. and like I'm not selling them anything. Like 90% of the time, they're never going to hire me as a trainer for the simple premise that like they're usually just another trainer, or it's like somebody that they're fine, they're set, they don't need a trainer. Like there's absolutely no reason for them to need guidance from me, and it's just like you're just talking just to talk.
I love that. I was speaking to somebody actually just before this, and I told her that I was getting onto a podcast, and she said that she didn't understand why trainers get together and talk about things with each other, and why they're so friendly with each other, because they're all in competition with each other. And I honestly don't believe that. Like,
Nah.
we all are so different as human beings, and trainers are a dime a dozen, man. You throw a rock into a room of 20 people, it bounces off 3 personal trainers. So, and like every person that we have as clients is a unique individual relationship it's just so much different. It's not just fitness, and it couldn't exist without that relationship. And we just, as trainers, get together and talk about how to make our own businesses better. And yeah, I honestly don't feel like I'm in competition with really anybody at Evolve. Like it's all just one big family.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, I know that I'm very new in business, and I don't really understand a lot about business, and probably to business people that doesn't make any sense, but it seems to work. So.
Well, I think you're on the right page. Like, you can't. Who are you if you're trying to hold people around you back? Like, what does your essence amount to if all you want to do is pull people down the tunnel to get up the tunnel? Like, we're all just going to be rats at the bottom of the tunnel at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody's working together to elevate the people around them, then people are more likely to rise up. Like, I work in the same gym as Andrew Coates. Granted, he has years and years of experience, so 90% of the time people are going to be like, well, Andrew probably knows the answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
But like him and Dean Guido and Dean Somerset and John Chung, they like put together the Evolve Strength Symposium.
Just this weekend.
And like that is something where it could be like, I could be like, oh wow, like I don't know, that's an Andrew Dean thing, and like I'm not gonna go. But like they did something to make me better, to make all kinds of other people better.
Yeah.
Because it's like that whole idea, like, look, like they could like come up with some mastermind thing and keep it secret, and then they would only get the information.
Right.
But
these masterminds.
they have their podcasts, and it kind of inspired my podcast, and they talk about like making other people better through knowledge and through connecting people with other people who want to make people better. So yeah, like that's the big idea. And I think anybody who thinks, oh well, I gotta cut down this guy to make me better, well, they're not playing the long game.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Like my clients could get value from things that you say, your clients could get value from things that I say, our clients could get value from things that anybody says. Like a brand new trainer fresh out of a Weekend Warrior course probably has one thing to say that's gonna stick.
Absolutely.
And like I have nothing against any certification as long as the person is ethical and willing to put in the work to make it happen. Because like if you don't know your craft, then it's just not going to work. It's too tough of an industry.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, I mean, granted, like I did some of the NAIT courses, I did the CanFit, I did the Mike Boyle cert, so a person could be like, oh well, Weekend Warrior, you're making fun of that, hey, well it's like, but then I also spent a ton of time on continuing education, spent some time with like just shadowing trainers for like months.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like everybody has their own path, everybody has their own roadmap, there's no like template to anything. It's you get out what you put in life, in the training industry, in friendships, relationships, everything.
Mm-hmm. I
kind of went off on a tangent there.
That's all right. I'm following. I'm not disagreeing with anything.
Good. I like to put things on the table so that maybe somebody that needs to hear something hears it and they're like, oh, well, I feel a little bit better now, you know?
We all get there. I've been there a lot recently, and I've been talking to people who have said, you know, that I over the years I've inspired them to do things, and people that I didn't even know were talking about me, you know, or following my work or what I was doing, and it's just like that's what I'm doing this for, because you know, God knows personal training is not a $1 million job, but you know, we do this to help people, and if we can change lives and help people change their behavior or change their way of thinking to better themselves. That's what we're all in this for.
My theme of the day, because I just have found a lot of people are pretty hard on themselves, especially with this weather. I don't know what it is, but it's just been like somebody out there thinks you're awesome. Like for you, your son thinks you're awesome.
Yeah.
Like no matter what day it is or what you fed him for food, he thinks you're awesome.
That's right. Yeah.
And sometimes we have to reflect on that. I think probably a lot of the people that you think poorly probably think highly, and that goes for anybody listening to this. I think it's kind of like how we talked about how nobody cares. Well, nobody cares about the things that we're condescending towards ourselves about, you know, like they don't care that we think so poorly of ourselves. They care about the things that are memorable and how we make them feel. They care about that nice thing that we said the first time that we met them, or they care about the things that we're passionate about. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
So it's like focusing on the positive, as you do so well.
I do try.
So in the next like year, what's like something big and exciting that you're looking forward to for yourself? Like a holiday or just like a little goal or just something?
Well, I started working with someone in Edmonton here. Kyle Smith is his name. And he's got a business coaching program, and I've started that, and I'm excited to get going and really learn a bit more about the marketing and the business end of things, because if you've ever read the book The E-Myth, there's basically the premise is there's 3 different types of people in each person that's running a business, and one of them is a technician, right? So that's, in this instance, that's the trainer, that's the thinking about physiology, anatomy, this kind of stuff, and I feel like I've done a fairly reasonable job at acquiring knowledge there, and I can help people with what I already have. But if I don't know how to sell myself, and I don't know how to adequately kind of keep up with the marketing of today, then I'm not going to be able to help anybody. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, is kind of developing my knowledge in that realm of our careers, and then hopefully expanding my reach a little bit more to a wider audience.
I like it. That's a good one. So that's pretty much it. That's all the questions that I have for you. I think I basically like made you talk and think about all the toughest things that have ever happened in your life, and for that I feel a little bit bad, but we're still bros, so we good.
Well, there's that thing about vulnerability, right? And I felt like I don't like to kind of display that over my social media accounts, but I think if someone invites me to do a podcast, then it's should be guilt-free game to talk about stuff like that. So totally. I didn't mind opening up either.
Sweet, and I appreciate that, and I hope that the right people hear the right episode at the right time.
That's
and
right.
As always, I encourage people to listen to more than just this episode. Check out the other ones. But without further ado, we will sign off. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
I don't know what else I need to do to really validate the importance of being grateful for things. Like, we're not all dealt the same cards. We don't all have the same outcomes. But there's no reason why anybody can't think of 5 things that make today great. And it could just be that you cooked your rice perfect. It could be that the sun went up. It could be that you had water. Or it could be that you had a good sleep. Just come up with your 5 things and remember them, because sometimes that's the things that keep you moving forward. Thanks for listening. Hope you listen to some more.